The second I stepped out of the car, I felt the air shift, that salty floral breeze brushing against my skin like a whispered warning. Claire had picked the perfect spot for her wedding weekend, an elegant inn tucked into the cliffs, all soft blush tones and curated charm. It was beautiful. She was glowing. And I was doing everything I could to play my part, the supportive big sister, the steady one. I unpacked my bag, checked my lipstick, and told myself I could handle a weekend of toasts and tulle. But deep down, something tugged. Claire had always been impulsive, but marrying a man none of us had met? That was bold, even for her. By the time the rehearsal dinner started, I'd almost convinced myself to let it go. I was here for her, not to question her choices. The terrace looked like a magazine spread, warm candlelight, champagne flutes catching the glow, everyone dressed like they belonged in a rom-com montage. I laughed at jokes, sipped slowly, kept my guard up just enough. Claire was practically levitating, so in love it hurt to look at her. And then I saw him, the groom. He turned around to grab a drink, and the glass nearly slipped from my hand. It was Ethan. The man who vanished from my life without a word, who once looked at me like I was the only person in the room, and then disappeared like I never existed. My chest tightened. He froze too, just for a second. Then, like a bad actor in a play he didn't audition for, he smiled politely and introduced himself, as if we were strangers. And Claire? She was blissfully unaware, curled into his side, calling him her miracle. I couldn't feel my legs at first. I smiled. I had to. But inside, it was chaos. Faces blurred, the sound of forks on china turned to static. I kept nodding at people I barely heard, laughing at jokes I didn't catch. Meanwhile, Ethan sat 2 seats down, sipping his wine like we hadn't once shared a bed, like he hadn't once whispered promises into my neck and then disappeared into silence. Not even a goodbye. Not a single damn explanation. And now here he was, engaged to my sister, acting like I was a stranger in his audience. I wanted to scream, but instead I asked Claire if she needed help with the place cards. That's what big sisters do, right? They show up, they swallow fire, they decorate tables and smile through betrayal. Every time I glanced his way, my stomach twisted. He wouldn't even look me in the eye. Maybe he thought I'd play along. Maybe he thought I'd stay silent, like I had no right to the past we shared. And maybe for a moment, I considered it. For Claire. Because she was so happy. Because I knew how fragile joy could be. But nothing felt real. The air, the laughter, even my own voice. All of it filtered through a fog of disbelief. I hadn't seen Ethan in years, and now I was seated across from him at my sister's wedding rehearsal dinner, pretending like the worst night of my life never happened, pretending like he didn't tear me in two. I clenched my champagne glass tighter. He looked away. Claire beamed at both of us, her eyes sparkling with love. And all I could think was, what the hell kind of sick joke is this? I excused myself halfway through dessert. My hands were shaking, and I couldn't let Claire see. I ducked into the powder room, locked the door, and braced both palms against the marble counter. My reflection stared back, stunned and pale, like I'd seen a ghost, which in a way I had. Ethan wasn't just an ex. He was unfinished business, a wound I never stitched up. And now that wound was standing in front of my family, toasting to forever. My jaw clenched so hard, I thought I might crack a tooth. I stayed in there longer than I should have, replaying everything. The night he left, the messages I sent that were never answered, the nights I cried until my throat burned. And now? Now he gets to marry my sister like none of it ever happened? No. Something inside me started to harden. Not from bitterness, not yet, but from instinct. From the sense that this wasn't just painful, it was wrong. I couldn't explain it, but I knew deep in my gut. Ethan hadn't changed. He hadn't suddenly become someone who deserved Claire. When I finally stepped back out, I straightened my dress, fixed my face, and rejoined the table like nothing happened. Claire ran over and hugged me tight, so full of joy she practically glowed. And I hugged her back fiercely. She had no idea what I was carrying behind my smile. I'd come for her big day. But now I wasn't sure I could survive it without reliving the worst night of my life all over again. I woke up the next morning with my jaw sore from clenching all night. The air felt heavier somehow, like even the sunlight coming through the window knew I was lying through my teeth. I had smiled, I had hugged, I had played the part. And now, sipping coffee alone in the little garden behind the inn, I kept asking myself the same question. What the hell am I supposed to do? Telling Claire would crush her. But pretending Ethan was just some blank slate, that would crush me. So I decided to wait. Watch. Listen. Not because I forgave him, not even close, but because I needed to be sure. If I was going to risk breaking her heart, I needed to know that mine wasn't just leading the charge out of spite. I started paying closer attention, tuning into every gesture, every word he said, and it didn't take long. I caught the way his eyes lingered on one of the bridesmaids, Jessica, a little too long. I heard him laugh a little too softly when she touched his arm. My stomach dropped. Later that afternoon, I walked into the prep room and found his phone face down on the table, buzzing. He was in the hallway, flirting with the DJ. I didn't touch the phone. I'm not proud of that part. But I stood still, memorizing every detail of how he looked at women when he thought no one was watching. It was the same look he used to give me, the same charm, the same calculated warmth. And I realized this wasn't just my trauma talking. This was who he was. The hardest part was pretending everything was fine. I braided Claire's hair while she gushed about her honeymoon plans. I helped her pick between ivory and pearl earrings, like my heart wasn't pounding every time Ethan entered the room. I laughed when I needed to, smiled when people looked, and all the while, my mind was cataloging every red flag like a detective in heels. His stories didn't line up. One moment he said he'd lived in Chicago last year. The next, it was Denver. He mentioned a job he supposedly left months ago, but referenced a coworker like they still spoke daily. I started keeping notes, literally. On my phone, in a locked folder, I jotted down times, names, odd details. I didn't even know what I was looking for at first, just inconsistencies. Anything to confirm this gut feeling that wouldn't go away. And then it happened. I walked into the lounge to grab my charger and saw Ethan hunched over his phone, whispering. When he saw me, he jumped. That alone was enough to send warning bells through my chest. He flashed that same rehearsed smile, said he was just checking on a friend. But I knew that look. That was the same look he gave me the night before he vanished. Later that night, Jessica, the bridesmaid, slipped away during dinner. I followed. Not on purpose at first, but I saw her phone lit up in the hallway and recognized the name at the top of her screen. Ethan. I froze, too far to read the message, close enough to feel sick. And I realized something important. I wasn't just dealing with a bad memory. I was standing face to face with a repeat performance. The same game, new target. Only this time, I wasn't going to let him win. That night, lying in the guest bed under a lace canopy that felt way too delicate for the weight I was carrying, I stared at the ceiling and made a decision. I wasn't going to confront him yet, not without something concrete. Claire deserved more than a warning built on a ghost story. She deserved proof, real, undeniable truth, the kind that doesn't unravel with charm or excuses. And if Ethan had taught me anything, it was that the truth always leaks through the cracks. You just have to know where to look. I started watching him like it was my job. I memorized his tells. The way he tugged at his sleeve when he lied, how he avoided eye contact when someone asked a direct question. It wasn't paranoia anymore. It was strategy. I smiled wider, spoke sweeter, played the role so well even he started to relax. He thought I'd moved on, that I'd buried the past, but I was simply playing a longer game now. Every time he texted behind Claire's back, I logged it. Every suspicious glance, every half-truth, noted, saved, ready. They all thought I was just the supportive sister, there to fluff the veil and calm the chaos. And I was. But I was also something else. I was the storm behind the smile, the calm before the unraveling. Because they thought I was smiling. I was calculating. By morning, the plan was starting to take shape, not out of revenge, but out of necessity. Claire had picked me as her maid of honor because she trusted me, not just with details and decor, but with her heart. And now I carried it like something fragile and flammable. I couldn't just tell her Ethan was a liar. I had to show her, so I started collecting, quietly, deliberately, screenshots, photos. Little details that, on their own, might seem like coincidence, but together painted a clear, ugly picture. It didn't take long to get what I needed. Jessica hadn't even bothered to delete her messages. Ethan had texted her at midnight, calling her gorgeous, saying he wished they had more time alone before the weekend was over. I nearly threw up when I read it, but instead I took a screenshot, then another, then one more, just in case. Every piece of this puzzle became a stepping stone toward the only thing that mattered now, protecting my sister from a man who didn't deserve her. Claire, blissfully unaware, kept asking if I was ready for the big speech. "I can't wait to hear what you say about us," she said, grinning while sipping tea on the veranda. I nodded, kissed her cheek, and promised I was working on something special. And I was. I wasn't just writing a toast. I was crafting a mirror, a moment. The kind people don't forget. Because if they were going to hand me a microphone in front of everyone who mattered, I wasn't about to waste it on pretty words and half-truths. At first, I tried to write the kind of speech everyone expects. Sweet, polished, something about sisterhood and growing up sharing clothes and secrets. But every time I put pen to paper, the words rang hollow. How could I stand up there and pretend, knowing what I knew, knowing who Ethan really was? So I scrapped the script and started over. This time, I told the truth. Not all of it. Not yet. Just enough to let the weight rise naturally. The childhood memories, the closeness Claire and I had always shared, the way I'd always protected her. I wanted the audience to feel that bond. Because it wasn't just a toast. It was a build-up, a quiet climb before the fall. I asked Claire if I could go last. End on a high note, I told her with a wink. She hugged me and said, of course. She wanted everyone to hear how proud I was. And I was proud. I am proud. But I'm also angry and heartbroken and done staying quiet to protect someone who's hiding behind a tux and a good smile. Ethan didn't just ghost me years ago. He taught me what betrayal tastes like. And now he was trying to feed that same poison to my sister, wrapped in cake and confetti. Still, I kept my cool. I laughed with the other bridesmaids, helped Claire pin her hair for the ceremony, even ironed the ties for the groomsmen. No one suspected a thing. But the speech sat in my phone like a loaded weapon, every line intentional, every word rehearsed. I'd read it over and over until it settled in my bones. And when the music stopped and the glasses were full, they'd hand me the microphone, and I'd give them something else entirely. The night before the wedding, I barely slept. Not because I was nervous. No, it was something heavier than that. A quiet weight in my chest, like the final breath before a storm. I lay awake, replaying the speech in my head, every syllable etched with care. This wasn't about exposing Ethan to humiliate him. It was about showing Claire the truth she couldn't see through the sparkle and silk. I kept picturing her face when it landed, and the ache of it nearly broke me. But lies rot everything they touch. And she deserved a love that didn't hide in shadows. The morning of the wedding came with sun and soft winds. Claire was radiant, floating around the bridal suite in a satin robe, humming to herself. I helped her into her dress, zipped the back, and swallowed the lump rising in my throat. I wanted so badly for her to have everything she dreamed of. But not like this, not with him. The ceremony flew by in a blur of petals and promises. Ethan looked calm. Too calm. Like someone who'd played this part before. I smiled at him from the front row. He smiled back, and for a second, I think he believed he'd won. But what he didn't know was that my phone, tucked in my clutch, held everything. The screenshots, the texts, the timestamps, the truth. And when they called for speeches and Claire looked at me with those shining eyes, I stood slowly, heart pounding, heels steady. They gave me the microphone, and I was going to give them the mirror. I stood there for a moment, just holding the microphone. The ballroom was quiet, not silent, but that soft, expectant hush you only get when people lean in. Claire beamed at me from the sweetheart table, still glowing, still so full of hope it made my throat tighten. I took a breath, smiled, and began the way I knew I had to, with love, with memories. Stories of us as little girls, making forts out of couch cushions, whispering secrets in the dark. I watched her eyes fill with warmth. I could almost feel her relax. I told the room how lucky I felt to be her sister, how proud I was to stand beside her on the most important day of her life. Every word was true, just not the whole truth. I could see Ethan watching me carefully now, his smile stiff, like he sensed something off but wasn't sure what. Good. That was the point. Let him sweat. Let him wonder how much I remembered, how much I knew. And still, I kept going, weaving the sweetness with threads of something deeper. Something darker. Then I shifted. My voice didn't rise. It didn't crack. I stayed calm, steady, measured. Years ago, I said, I loved someone. I believed him. I trusted him. And then, one night, he vanished. No goodbye, no explanation. Just silence. A murmur rippled through the crowd. I could feel the tension spreading like static. That man, I said, my eyes locked on Ethan now, is standing next to my sister. Claire's smile faltered. Ethan's face went blank, and I knew. This was it. Gasps echoed before the words even settled. I didn't look at anyone else, just Claire. Her expression shifted slowly, like watching a building collapse in slow motion. Her brow creased. Her mouth opened just slightly, as if trying to catch a breath that wouldn't come. Ethan reached for her hand, but she pulled away, confused, frozen. I didn't want this, I said softly. Not like this. But I couldn't stand by and let you promise your life to someone who's still lying. I turned then, eyes scanning the stunned room. He's been messaging another woman this weekend, one of your bridesmaids. You could hear a pin drop. I could feel my pulse in my ears, in my fingertips, but I didn't shake. I reached into my clutch, pulled out my phone, and held it up. I didn't want to believe it. I really didn't. So I collected the messages, the times, the receipts. And since this is a room full of people who love Claire, I figured we all deserve the same thing. I gestured toward the projector screen behind the head table. A click from the DJ booth, a murmur from the guests, and then, boom. The first screenshot filled the screen. Ethan's number. His name. The timestamp. You looked amazing in that dress today. Then another. Meet me by the kitchen in 10. Then a photo. Nothing explicit. I wasn't here to humiliate, only to expose, but damning enough. The color drained from Ethan's face. Jessica stood up, red-faced, stammering. Claire didn't move. She was staring at the screen, blinking like maybe if she closed her eyes hard enough, she'd wake up from this. I turned back to Claire. I wanted to kneel beside her, to hold her, to whisper that she didn't do anything wrong, that she was just kind enough to believe in someone who didn't deserve it. But I stayed where I was. This moment wasn't about me. It was hers. Hers to process. Hers to choose what came next. I cleared my throat and steadied my voice one last time. "Claire," I said, "you are the most loyal, loving, radiant person I've ever known. And you deserve a love that honors you. That doesn't hide. That never makes you feel less than." Her eyes welled up. Mine burned. People were shifting in their chairs now, whispering, some looking at Ethan like he'd suddenly started to rot in real time. He tried to speak, stuttered something about it being harmless, that nothing happened. The usual reflexive lies. But no one was listening anymore. The room had already made up its mind. His truth didn't carry weight here, not anymore. I handed the microphone to the coordinator, nodded once to Claire, and stepped away from the spotlight. Applause didn't follow. Silence did. Thick, stunned silence. But it wasn't empty. It was full, with grief, with anger, with truth finally spoken. I didn't need to say another word. I'd done what I came to do. I walked past Ethan without looking at him. I didn't need to. The mirror had done its job. Here's to the bride, and to the truth she deserves. I found Claire sitting alone in the bridal suite, still in her gown, the veil crumpled beside her like something shed in a storm. Her eyes were glassy, her lipstick long gone. She didn't look at me right away, just stared out the window at the ocean, waves crashing like applause no one wanted. I stepped in quietly, unsure if she'd want to see me. I'd shattered her perfect day. But when she finally turned, her face broke. Not in anger, but in something softer. Pain. Confusion. Love. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" she whispered. I sat beside her and told the truth. That I hadn't been sure. That I didn't want to hurt her if there was even a sliver of doubt. That I wanted to believe Ethan had changed. She nodded slowly, hugging her elbows like they were the only things keeping her upright. "I feel so stupid," she said. "I let him in. I trusted him." And I said what I wish someone had said to me back then. "You're not stupid. You're good. There's a difference." We stayed like that for a long time, two sisters in the wreckage of what was supposed to be a fairy tale. By sunset, the venue was half empty. The band had packed up. The cake sat untouched. Ethan had tried to spin his way out of it, claimed emotional confusion, stress, anything he thought would save face. But no one bought it. Not Claire, not our parents. Not even Jessica, who left early, red-eyed and silent. Word traveled fast, of course. It always does. By the time we got back to our rooms, social media was already pulsing with whispers. And oddly, through all the chaos, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. The next morning, I woke up to a flood of messages. Most from friends, some from strangers, women I'd never met, all saying the same thing. That happened to me too. Apparently, Ethan had left more than one trail of heartbreak behind. Ghosted engagements, overlapping relationships, a mess hidden under charm and timing. Some of the women even sent screenshots of their own. It was all the proof I never knew I needed, not just of who he really was, but that I hadn't imagined it. I hadn't overreacted. I'd simply been one of many, now finally seen. Claire took a few days to breathe, to cry, to untangle what she thought she had from what it really was. We talked a lot, sometimes through silence, sometimes through laughter that felt too loud, but was all we had. She thanked me more than once, not just for telling the truth, but for waiting until it mattered. "You gave me the ending," she said one night, curled up on my hotel bed, "but you also gave me the chance to write a better beginning." And I held her hand, knowing we were both a little freer now than we'd been before. The story didn't stop with us, though. It took on a life of its own. A cousin shared a video clip from the toast, and within days it was everywhere. Comments poured in, some supportive, some skeptical, all fascinated. I didn't respond to any of them, but I did write something, a personal essay. I titled it The Toast That Freed Us Both, and I didn't hold back. I talked about the silence, the shame, the emotional knots women tie to protect people who don't deserve it. I didn't name Ethan. I didn't have to. The truth was loud enough. The essay went viral in less than a week. Shared, reposted, translated. Women wrote in from every corner of the world, some with similar stories, others simply saying thank you for saying what they couldn't. It was overwhelming at first, but also healing. It felt like taking something that once broke me and turning it into a bridge. Claire read it before I published. She cried when she got to the last line. Then she nodded and said, "Send it." And I did. Ethan disappeared again, poetic in a way. No statements, no interviews, just silence, like the final vanishing act of a man who could only exist in shadows. But this time, the silence didn't sting. It didn't haunt. It simply passed through. We threw away the leftover favors, donated the flowers, and when Claire finally took off the ring, she didn't cry. She smiled. "I think I was more in love with the idea of him than the reality," she said. And that, I realized, is what healing sounds like. She didn't get the wedding she imagined, and I didn't get the closure I thought I needed. But we got something better. We got each other. We got truth. And we got free. He tried to marry into the perfect family. I gave him the perfect ending instead.